Hi folks, you're listening to the Paranormal Peep Show with myself, Andy Chaplin, and Neil Geddes-Ward. Neil, how you doing?
Hi Andy, I'm alright, how are you? I'm actually been in the throes of a major storm over these past few days, and it's been hitting all of Britain actually. I mean, you've been suffering up there?
Yeah, certainly woke up this morning and absolutely peeing down all over the place. High winds as well, which is rather annoying for my events because I tend to use kind of plastic banners and Corex board banners attached to posts and things. So I don't know if they're going to be there in the morning, but here's hoping.
Now that's your psychic events, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, my psychic events. So anyone in the southeast of England, if they're listening, tuned in events, you can find tuned in events on Facebook.
So Andy, what you got coming up in April or May maybe?
Yeah, there's a few events. If people want to have a look at Facebook and tuned in events, there's quite a few different ones coming up. Off the top of my head, I think there's a few psychic one-to-one evenings at pubs and a couple of demonstrations as well. So everything will be listed on Facebook. Have a look at that. Whilst Facebook is still going, because I mean, there's a lot of censorship. I don't know if you've come across this, Neil, but they seem to be having their freedom of speech censorship ban hammer coming down on a lot of groups.
I know something about YouTube has been restricting or not listing people's controversial videos and things like that.
Yeah, this is it. So I don't know what the situation is with David Icke. I think they are going after David Icke. They're certainly going after people like Alex Jones and Milo and people who are kind of wanting to smash this political correctness straitjacket that's going on freedom of speech at the moment. But I have a feeling they're going to go after the spiritual as well. I did see some inklings that they're going after anything that's either not verifiable or anything that they seem that they deem that's a little bit alternative and off the wall, I think is what they're going after. So not good.
Nothing about quantum physics will be allowed. Better get rid of the CERN project. Better fill that in with cement. And because remember, a lot of quantum physics is theoretical physics. So technically, they can't prove it or verify it. They just think maybe. They plough billions of pounds into these things, of these maybes, of course. But the reality is there's a lot of people homeless and cold and shivering in storms like this, and they're definite realities. But are they ploughing billions into that? Not really. So there we go. Just my little grunt there.
Yeah.
So,
and I wonder if they're going to go after the UFO community, because it does seem to be like in the same way that the Nazis did. They go after each community one by one by one. So with the Nazis, they didn't go after everyone all in one go. There's this famous poem, isn't there? First of all, they came for the trade unionists, and I said nothing because I wasn't a trade unionist. Then they came for the Bolsheviks. I said nothing because I wasn't a Bolshevik. Then they came for the Jews, and I said nothing because I wasn't Jewish. Then they came for me, and by that time there was nothing left. There was nobody to speak up for me. So this seems to be where YouTube is going. This is kind of like an etheric gulag, so to speak. So first they're coming up after the anti-vaxxers. I think that's kind of where they're what they have been saying they're going after. Then they're going after the conspiracy theorists. I know I have seen some posts where they are going after unverifiable conspiracy theories, I think is one of the phrases they were using. And who knows what they'll be going after. Maybe the UFO community is next, maybe the paranormal community is next. Who knows where their freedom of speech restrictions
the poem could be extended to say, and then they went after the Paranormal Peep Show. But we did speak up.
We did speak. We are speaking up now.
Yeah.
We
can actually interview them before they take us off there. That'd be cool.
But whilst we're still able and just about able on the internet to talk to people on the woo-woo subjects, who have we got coming up?
Well, how much are you into alternative star systems? I mean, we know a bit about astronomy because obviously we've been talking about the moon. Obviously, we've been talking about the Apollo moon landings. And anyone that's interested in the Apollo moon landings, was it real or was it fake? Andy and I recently took part in an online discussion, and you can find that on YouTube, called the Apollo Detectives Part 3, and there's actually a Part 1 and a Part 2, so you can feel free to watch all three of them before they're taken off.
Yeah, the thing is, Neil, you're joking, but I'm seriously wondering if that's what, at some point, give it 2 years, 5 years, who knows, some point down the line, maybe they will try and take it down.
Yeah, there is alternative sites for that sort of thing where you can put them up on alternative sites, Vimeo, and there's another one, I forget which one it was. But for anyone that's interested at the moment, you can get the Apollo Detectives Part 1, Part 2 and Part 3 on YouTube. You can see Andy and I in vision talking to people like Marcus Allen. And we've recently spoke to Bart Sibrel and Jarrah White, some leading figures in the Apollo conspiracy.
Do you know, every time I hear you say Bart Sibrel, I'm just expecting Bart Simpson.
Yeah, I know. It's a great name. I love it.
He must get that all the time.
Yeah. It's all short for Bartholomew, of course, but everyone shortens it to Bart, so it sounds more comical, doesn't it? But yeah, so anyone that's interested in that, please check out the Apollo Detectives for some long, interesting discussions with pictures, of course. So it's something we can't do on the internet radio, but we do our best. So tonight we're moving from the moon to a little bit further out in space to the stars, to the Pleiadian star system, which is sometimes called the Seven Sisters, and I know that because I've done my astronomy a little bit. So
not to be confused with the train station in London.
No, exactly. So tonight's guest then we'll welcome, talking about the Pleiadians, but it's not just about the star system, it's about what's there and what information maybe the residents of that star system have got for us. It's Carol Noonan speaking, I believe, from Portsmouth. Are you there, Carol?
Hi, Neil and
Hello.
Andy.
Hello, Carol. How you doing?
Hi.
Welcome
I'm
to
really
the Peep
good.
Show. Welcome to the Peep Show.
Thank you so much for having me as a guest on your show.
Good.
No problem.
Now you're in Portsmouth, is that right? In the United Kingdom?
That's right. I'm based in Portsmouth now.
Okay. So that's just across the way from the Isle of Wight, which is where David Icke lives, who we mentioned earlier. You don't see David Icke coming off the ferry or anything like that, do you?
No, unfortunately not. Because
he might do a double take and think you're a reptilian.
Well, I'd be there with my sleeping bag, camping out to see him.
So, anyway, you're an author of a book, aren't you? Is that right?
I am. I wrote a book called The Pleiadian Child, which contains 3 sections. So the beginning would be my story and how I connected to the Pleiadians. And the second part, the middle section, is channeled writing directly from them. And then the third section is where I'm at now, which is kind of out of date because I wrote it, I completed it like 3 or 4 years ago. So I've moved on since then. But at the time, the third section was where I was today with the things and the stuff that I was writing and the information that was coming through to me.
So obviously it's you're at this stage, but obviously there was a beginning to it. I mean, how far does this go back? Where did it all begin?
My story is quite an unusual, interesting one, and although sad and harrowing at times, it has led me to a deeper understanding and deeper knowledge of who I am and where I came from. But my story starts off as a child, and I was always seeing things as a child. I was always seeing spirit, and my guides were always talking to me. And I would have had a lot of trauma and abuse and neglect and raped. I was also raped as a child by my cousin. So it's quite harrowing at times, but I don't regret any of it. And that can be hard for some people to understand or take or accept, especially if they've had similar situations that they're really struggling to get through and cope with. But I'm thankful for my childhood now because it put me onto the spiritual path and into the loving embrace of the Pleiadians. And I questioned myself for a lot of years. And the questions that would go through my mind was, who in their right mind is going to believe that I am channeling the Pleiadians? This little poverty-stricken girl from Hackney in London. I just kept asking myself that question. And so I had a whole process to work through that took me a good, say, 7 or 8 years to work through, to accept in myself that actually I was never that little girl that was powerless and insignificant and empty. I was never that little girl.
Do you believe that your soul is actually from the Pleiades, or have you been told that it's from the Pleiades?
I've been told by the Pleiades that I'm from there, and it goes back to childhood. And I've done several. I say several. I've done like 3 or 4 different shamanic courses where they've shown me a past life that I came from there, and that we're here en masse. So it's not just me. I'm not different to any other starseed at all.
So you think there's like a wave of people from the light side, so to speak, that are kind of incarnating and kind of interacting with this planet to change it for the better?
Absolutely. I think that we're here en masse to help to raise the frequency and energy of the planet and humanity as a whole. And I do believe that we're here en masse in order to do that. And I think some of us are at different stages in our own individual soul awakening. And I think some of us have woken up. And I kind of categorize it as into 3 sections. So you've got those that haven't woken up at all, and you've got the medium section where some have woken up a little bit, and then you've got the higher end of the spectrum where they've really woken up.
I'm on snooze, I think, at the minute.
Carol, would you agree with the sentiment, and I've felt this for a long time, that Earth is almost like a battleground? It's kind of like light versus dark, and it's almost a stalemate, because you're probably aware of the news, like London is becoming a bloodbath. The planet is becoming quite evil in many ways, but at the same time, there's also a lot of creativity and innovation and kind of people waking up at the same time. There seems to be a polarizing between light and dark. I don't know if you've noticed that.
Yeah, I do. I absolutely agree with you. And I think it's been going on a long time. They showed me some, because I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but I didn't actually have any schooling. And I'll go into that maybe later. But what the Pleiadians showed me is that there is a war between light and dark. So you've got a positive agenda and you've got a negative agenda. And you can't have something, or you can't have anything that exists in the universe without having an opposite.
Yeah.
It's a universal law. If something exists, then you have to have an opposite to it as well. So they've showed me that it's a war between light and dark, and they do call it, when they say it to me, they do call it the war of the worlds. So it's a war between light and dark, and it's not just on Earth; it's in the universe. It's going on. So they've showed me, and that does include the negative agenda, and that filters down. And then it becomes, like you were saying earlier in the program, it becomes where we're being filtered by YouTube and Google and Facebook especially. But there is a raising of consciousness. And I've been told recently over the last couple of weeks that the next 20 years, 10, 20, 30 years is very important, but especially the next 20 years, there's going to be huge shifts in the next 20 years, but also 10 to 30, and it's going to be en masse. And I think that it is a battle. I think it's almost, sometimes I see things, because I work very visually, and sometimes I see things, they show me a lot of images which contain downloads of information. But one that I have seen for over and over again is an image of a graph. And that works individually and with humanity as a whole en masse. So that image of a graph could be either up or down and to do with specific things. But I see it in the next 20 years, and then you've got the 10 years and the 30 years on either side of it. The next 20 years is so important. So the humanity's consciousness is raising, and the negative side of things is is also heightened and trying to put a stop on things. But I don't think it will be able. I think we've gone past that now. And the more people that come out, the more positive effect it will have on humanity. The more people that speak out.
Have you actually seen the Pleiadians? I mean, are they human looking, or do they look completely different, or how would you describe them?
Well, when I see them behind me, slightly on my left, and I see them in the same way that I see spirit. Because as a child, I saw spirit physically, and it was so physical. I could have reached out and touched my granddad, and I'm sure I would have felt flesh and bone. But as an adult, I've only ever really seen spirit in my mind's eye. And I see the Pleiadians in the same way. And to me, they look very tall, very thin, blonde, blue-eyed, quite pale skin, very angular features.
So almost like Nordics.
I was just thinking the same, actually. Have you heard of the Nordics, Carol?
I have.
Yeah? Would you say that they're the Nordics as people typically describe them, or are they something different?
They look very similar. When I started to channel in 2009, and I didn't know who it was until 2010. And when I started to channel them, I just wanted the information to come from them. So I didn't want to read or Google or research anything else, because I didn't want it to influence what I was getting directly. Yeah. So I didn't Google them or the information I was getting until probably about 4 or 5 years after, until I'd written enough of the book and felt comfortable enough and sure enough within myself that what I was getting was directly from them and not influenced by any outside influence or subconsciousness of my own.
Yeah. So when you went from sort of like doing the typical medium ship of contacting the afterlife mediumship, did you were there hints somewhere along that pathway that the Pleiadians were likely to show up? Like, for instance, maybe a spirit guide would say, perhaps typically, you will soon be receiving higher messages from someone else or something. Or was there any kind of clues along the way that this was going to happen?
I think there was clues along the way. I think in my childhood, there was clues. But I was brought up in such a poverty-stricken area where people are really dumbed down, and the school system I really struggled with. I guess the earliest clue was when I was, I think I was 12 or 13, and I had such a reluctance to go to school. And there were times when my mum was getting hassled and into trouble from the authorities who were writing to her. And she was, God bless her, but she was a very bad parent. She had a lot of stuff going on, and she just wasn't able to be a parent or a good parent. She wasn't able to be a good parent. So there were times when she just kind of let me off and let me do my own thing. But there were times when she would be written to by the authorities, and she would say to me, you have to go to school. So in those moments, I would make an effort. And I remember one particular day that I made the journey. I put my uniform on. I had a bath. I had washed my hair. I made myself presentable. I put my uniform on. I got my bus fare and everything. And it was an hour journey from Hackney into the school, which was in Islington. So I made that journey. And then it was an hour back as well. And then I got to the school gates, and I just stood there, and I was held in this energy where I wasn't able to move. And it's happened quite a few times over the years. So I was just stood there for probably about half an hour, and I wasn't able to move. And they had huge black gates. And I just stood there, and I didn't understand what was going on. But again, skipping forward, going back to one of the shamanic courses that I did, I was taken back to that memory and shown what actually was going on. And the Pleiadians showed me that they held me in a like an energy field, because they and I heard word for word what they said, and they said to me a couple of years ago when I was having the memory that they put an energy force in front of me because they didn't want me to enter the school system, because if they had of, and this is almost word for word, they didn't want me to enter the school system because if I had of, I would have been lost to them.
Yeah, of course, the education system kind of like it ingrains people and with this notion that it's all a load of rubbish. It's all a load of kind of like I don't know, etheric nonsense, and it's drummed out of children as they grow up, and they end up being either skeptics or not even thinking about this kind of thing.
Exactly, and that's the agenda of the school system, is to shut kids down. It's not about education, and you can see that clearly if you look at what kids are being educated. It's nonsense. You know, our science is vastly untrue. Our history is vastly untrue. The information we're given about our bodies and health is vastly untrue. So that, to me, and in my understanding, that is part of the negative agenda, is the school system.
And obviously the negative agenda, a lot of people say that's to do with the reptilian agenda. And again, we're back onto the David Icke thing. Have your Pleiadian contacts talked about the reptilians and what their big plan is and where this is all going?
They haven't. I have had some negative experiences because I think it's like a light. People are like, and Andrew may have heard this idea before, where we're like lighthouses and spirit or light is attracted to us. And I think the same can be said for starseeds. I think especially with people who are out there and in the public eye, or speaking out publicly, there is a negative ET energy. And I've had some experiences with that. I don't tend to like talking about it that much because I believe that what you talk about, whether it's good or bad, it brings that energy in. So, but that would be...
However, I would add to that, if a meteorologist talks about a tornado coming, do you put your fingers in your ear and hope the tornado's not going to come and say, oh, well, it might attract it towards me, or is it better to be forewarned than forearmed?
I think that's a good point.
Do these aliens have forearms?
4 tentacles.
That's very funny. I didn't realise how funny you two were.
Oh, you haven't seen this. This isn't even a tenth of what we get up to.
We haven't cracked open the vodka yet, so
okay.
No, I mean we are obviously interested in the paranormal. But we do have a sense of humour, and so I mean a sideline that me and Andy do little voices and things like that. So little funny comical voices. So we like to have a laugh and a joke, you know.
Yeah, I think it's important to keep a sense of humour. Otherwise, this kind of stuff is quite dark and depressing, and it will make you go mad in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do have to keep it. We do have to have a sense of humour with it and keep it light, because otherwise it would pull us down. You know, I have a bit of a funny joke that always kind of catches me, and I think it has. I don't know. Anyway, but so my surname is Noonan, and at school, at primary school, I think I was about 9, I guess, but I was hugely bullied, and I used to the other kids used to call me Nanu because my surname is Noonan.
Well, from India, of course, yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Nanu, and before the interview, I was actually because I had to sleep earlier this afternoon in order to get my energy up for the interview. But when I woke up, I found that, and my partner John thought it was very funny, because he didn't see the higher vibrations of what was going on. But I began to chant and channel sound, and I was being shown how important sound is, and vibration, that there's vibration behind sound, behind words. And this is very new information that came through just this evening before the interview, and it's come through before, but this was specific. How sounds raise our vibration, and words, and they actually had two different. They had two languages in Egypt. Excuse me. So what's just coming to me is that I must have been about 12, and I was watching. My mum was watching the news, and I walked into the lounge, and there was an image of the Sphinx and the pyramids on the news, and I was held into this energy where I just couldn't move, and I was being shown a download of information to do with the Sphinx and the pyramids and Egypt. And I was seeing it in my mind's eye, and I was seeing that when you look head on onto the Sphinx, and I think it's the right paw as you look head onto it. I do forget now, so I might be getting the wrong paw, but I don't think so, because I can still see it in my mind's eye, that beneath the right paw, and I was only 12 at this time, it was before I read anything about the Sphinx or Egypt, the steps going down into a chamber or large room, or area, and they showed me that there was secret knowledge or secret knowledge or wisdom that was hidden there.
This ties in actually with predictions made by the so-called sleeping prophet Edgar Cayce. I don't know if anyone's aware of him, but he was around in the 1930s in mostly the Depression of America, actually. And he was a guy that used to go into a trance and mostly give readings on people for health reasons. But one of the things he did do was do predictions. And one of the predictions was that I think he said in the 1990s was the time frame that he put it at, that a discovery will be made in the Giza pyramids and the Sphinx area. And he said something of a chamber below one of the paws of the Sphinx, containing the secrets to man's hidden knowledge or something like that. I can't remember the exact prediction now. So what you're saying was presumably maybe 15 years before that discovery was made. I'm taking a rough guess there, but it sounds very much the same sort of thing. I don't know if you've ever heard of Edgar Cayce. So I just thought I'd throw that in as a kind of confirmation maybe of what you felt.
I have heard of Edgar Cayce. I think he was an amazing channel for energy and for information and for spirit. I think he was at a very high level, and I think he was beyond his years. I think he was a very advanced soul. But when I saw this information, it was before I was consciously aware of any of the information that's already out there. I wasn't aware of what was going on or what was out there in terms of information.
Yeah.
I kind of educated myself in a way, because instead of going to school, I would go home and I would just read books. And we had quite a small library in Hackney at the time, but I would just go, and was always geared towards spiritual and spiritual esoteric subjects. So I think I read all the books in that library that they had, and I just read one after the other. There was one after the other, literally one after the other. And I wouldn't really go out. I would just stay at home in my room and read books, because I had such it was horrible. I mean, I was literally born into what I call hell. And I'm very grateful now. I'm very, very thankful now, because it put me onto the spiritual path. But I got to the point when I was 12 where I just wanted out. I'd had enough. I'd really had enough. I didn't want to be here anymore. And I laid down, and I would have spent a lot of time by myself as a child. And I was okay with that. Because I just used to talk to spirit, whether it was my guides or my granddad or whoever it was. I would just talk a lot to spirit. And So I lay down in my bed one day, and I had a mattress on the floor, which sounds horrible, but it's actually what I preferred. For some reason, I've always preferred laying on the ground than an actual bed, because it makes me feel more connected to the earth. So I was laying down on my mattress, and I was sobbing my heart out. I was really retching, really crying. And the next thing I knew, I was in the corner of the right-hand room of my, the right-hand corner of the ceiling of my room, which was just above the door. And I was gone for about 3 or 4 hours. And I had this out-of-body experience, and I went through a tunnel, and I met up with my granny, and I met up with different spirits that in my family, and some of them I knew and some of them I had never met. And then I met up with Jesus, who took me on a very long journey for about 3 or 4 hours, and basically saved my life, because I was deciding on committing suicide, and I was thinking of taking tablets. And I had this out-of-body experience, and I wasn't in the hospital. I wasn't under any medication. So doctors tend to say that, oh, it's because of the drugs or the anesthetic, and I wasn't on any of that. So I know that it's false, their claims to do with out-of-body experiences. So I met Jesus, and he took me through on this whole experience. And I do plan this year to have regression, to take me back to that experience and record it so that it's word for word what Jesus said to me. But basically, because I don't remember it word for word, but I do remember some of it. I was going to say the important bits, but some of the important bits I have forgotten. But go on, sorry.
Carol, out of interest, this is going to be a really interesting one. When you saw Jesus, can you describe what he looks like?
He was glowing. There was a glowing aura about him. He was quite thin. He looked tall to me at the time. I would say like 5'8", 6 foot. He had a long beard. He had kind of Mediterranean type skin, long beard that was probably to his just above his belly button, and it kind of went into an angle, into a point. I remember him where. So
he kind of looked like maybe the stereotypical idea.
He did. Yeah, he did. He was wearing some type of robes as well, but such a loving presence with him. And he took me. So he did look stereotypical. And he took me on this journey that lasted 3 or 4 hours, and he showed me different spiritual knowledge and spiritual understanding of me and also humanity. So he took me on a journey of my personal soul growth and how I needed to experience the things I was, and that and word for word, someday it will be okay, but not today, unquote. And then when I came back, and he showed me a lot of things, for myself and humanity, and how spirit works, how the I guess quantum physics works. And then when I came back, I was in a completely different space internally, and everything had changed for me. Everything changed for me. When I came back and woke up, and I knew it was real. I knew that experience was real, and it was very peaceful, very calm, kind of blissful, in a blissful state for about 3 or 4 weeks, 2, 3 or 4 weeks afterwards, until gradually that kind of energy ebbed away. And then the emotional pain came back again.
What's occurring to me, it's interesting your description of Jesus, because most things that I've seen of Jesus, when they've got photos or videos or films of him, depictions, paintings, he tends to have a fairly short beard. So you describe him almost like as a wizard type long beard, which is very interesting. So it's not quite as stereotypical as I was thinking. But one of the things that was just occurring to me was that could it, in theory, be the Pleiadians maybe trying to help you, but they come as a kind of image of something that will kind of be pleasing to you, like Jesus as a sort of a saviour figure, like they would call it an archetype in some circles, psychological circles. But maybe the Pleiadians might say, we need to help Carol, so what we'll do, we'll take this image, because it's been perhaps suggested in other quarters that the aliens, i.e. the Greys, when they're taking people on board, will sometimes masquerade as relatives or friends or doctors to those that they're interacting with. So some people have said, I saw my son on board and he was saying, don't worry, Mum, it's okay, lay on the couch and let them examine you. And then it kind of fades away and it turns out it's actually a Grey saying this. Now, yours sounds much more positive, so I just wondered if they're using the same sort of mind technology or something maybe to sort of say they're Jesus, or did you actually think it was totally Jesus and it was nothing to do with the Pleiadians, or is there some connection in some way with them?
I absolutely get what you're saying, and I think energy can and does masquerade itself as something other than really what it is. With my experience, I think it was Jesus, but I've also come to believe and understand. And I hope you get this. I hope it's not too way out there for people. I hope it's well received well. But I now believe that Jesus was Pleiadian.
So this could be where he's getting his like connection with God and the miracles and all that kind of thing. Like maybe Pleiadians have extra powers that humans don't have, maybe.
I think they come from a very loving, advanced people.
Mm. So do you think that the Pleiadian link is kind of like a version of humans, that their DNA has somehow connected with either humans on this planet or indeed started off humans on this planet?
Well, what they showed me is that the Pleiadians created humans in their like. And one of the first things they told me, which I found really profound, I don't know if other people do, but they said that the word God in the Bible should be replaced with the word gods, and then things would start to make much more sense. So the word God in the Bible should be replaced with the word gods.
In the original Hebrew, it was. Did you know that? In the original Hebrew,
I didn't know.
Gods. And in actual fact, before it was gods, it was known as guards. So
Right.
This is coming from Jordan Maxwell's material and his research. I don't know if you've heard of Jordan Maxwell.
No, I haven't, Neil.
But he was speaking to some of the really old school rabbis many decades ago, and the rabbis basically swear that the original term was not God at all. It was gods, and before
Wow.
gods, it was guards or the guardians.
That's really interesting. I find that really interesting. And, my story doesn't stop here. I'm still developing and evolving and having experiences. So, because I'm still evolving on the soul level as well as everyone else, including starseeds. So I'm still learning and downloading and having experiences, and touch wood, that won't stop ever. Because energy cannot be destroyed.
Yeah.
It just is reborn.
It
changes. What they showed me is that in the very beginning, very beginning, you had God, or whatever you want to call it, you had energy, you had God, and it wanted to know itself, so it created little sparks of energy, which became like spirit. And then spirit wanted to become physical. Spirit wanted to become physical. So it created itself into physical, being on earth physically. And you had different things going on in the universe. You also had, kind of skipping forward a little bit, that's how Atlantis was created. It was created through the the spirit that created itself physically, manifested physically, which was very pure, very loving, very clean, untainted, very positive. It had there was no negative energy on Earth at the time. And then negative energy gradually started to come in, which I would say was negative ET energy. And it changed, it corrupted, it spoilt Atlantis. And then we spread out into different, we spread out and we left Atlantis and we went to different places on Earth. And somewhere in between, I was shown that Pleiadian energy came in onto Earth and created us in their own like, which would working on one of the same timelines. So Pleiadian energy came in and created us in their likeness, and helped to build the pyramids, or built the pyramids and the Sphinx. And there's vast amounts of information and tunnels beneath. Sorry, let me rephrase that. There is vast amounts of information. Let me rephrase that again, because information keeps coming out. They have a huge amount of information that they want to share with us and connect with us. But I was shown the tunnels beneath Egypt, which goes out for miles and miles. And it's been recorded now by Sarah Parcak, which is Parcak, Sarah Parcak, who is satellited areas of Egypt, and has been able to see the tunnels. So people know they are there. So going back to your question about, our connection to the Pleiadians, we are hybrids. We do have, I have Pleiadian, it comes down to our DNA and our blood, and I've been told anyone who's rhesus negative would have Pleiadian blood in them. So we do have Pleiadian blood, because they did have sexual relations. They did intermingle with us, and they created us in their own likeness. So we are hybrids of, whether it be Pleiadians or Sirius or whoever. If you take an image of the Earth, and we have several different cultures and nationalities and people. We have several different types of people. And you take that image and you place that over the universe. The universe is teeming with life. We are not alone, and we have never been alone. And we come from different, when I say we come from the Pleiades. That would be my star tribe, or my family, where I come from. But other people would come from a different place, or a different star nation, or a different star system. So when we're not human, we're intermingled.
So where do you think the negative actually came from? Is this the Greys? Is it the reptilians? Who's doing this?
I think the Greys are negative. I think the reptilians are extremely negative. I did have an experience with the Greys, because I like to get things straight from the horse's mouth. So when I have experiences, I know that is true, or real, or a fact, rather than reading it in a book, because you can read something, but when you experience it, you know it's true. So I did have an experience with the Greys, where and I was in Galway at the time, where they took me up into the ship, and I was held I was on a slab, like a table, and there was other people on both sides of me, and I could hear screams and moans and aches and pains, and I knew they were doing negative stuff. I did write about it in my book. And I called it the Greys. But what I found that put fear into me was that they held me. They held my physical body, and they held my consciousness. So I wasn't able to move my consciousness into a different place, which I found very scary. But I didn't feel that they were bad.
So maybe more scientific.
Yes, I think they can be perceived as bad, but I think, I think they didn't see it. They didn't see it as bad. They just wanted to research and understand us. And if they had to do on us that caused us pain, that was neither here nor there for them. But what I find really interesting is they said they came to me, and I could see one on my, I think it was 2 on my right and 1 on my left, and they weren't very typical of the images that you see. And they were talking to me telepathically, and they said to me, they said to each other actually, this one is different. And I'll never forget that, given because it was afterwards, that was when I very first moved to Galway. So it was afterwards that I actually became consciously aware of the Pleiadians and that I had a connection to them.
I was going to say, so these greys, when they're doing their thing, did they impart any telepathic knowledge to you, or did you ask any questions to them? Did they communicate in any way?
Everything was telepathic, and they were about to do experiments on me, and I was filled with fear, and my whole body screamed no.
Did they tell you what they were going to do to you and why?
No, they didn't. But I could feel machinery around me, or some type of medical instruments or machinery or whatever it was. It wasn't good. Mostly around my head.
Okay, go on, Neil. What were you going to ask?
Well, yeah, it's actually interesting because you were talking about gods, that sort of thing, the Bible, that kind of thing. And my mind was thinking back to the reptilians and the fact that in the original story of Adam and Eve, you have the snake or the reptile comes and persuades Eve to, get Adam to bite the apple and things like that. Now, I'm probably not the first to suggest it. I'm sure there's other people kind of seeing a similarity, is that there must be a wonderment that maybe our knowledge of the reptilians goes back, beyond that. But maybe that's a hint of where they were in a kind of historical or legendary sense, the reptilians, and that's where they started to maybe interfere with the divinity, if you like, of the plan, whatever the plan is. And so, that naughtiness came in the form of the reptilians. And so, and maybe, like you said, you think Jesus is perhaps Pleiadian by origin. So he really was sent to try and, sort it all out kind of thing. So,
and look what they did to him.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that was, I know it sounds crazy and cracked, but I really believe, given my experiences, that Jesus was Pleiadian energy. And I know that sounds far-fetched and crazy. And it's nothing I've read that leads me to believe that. It's my experiences. Because I like to experience things to know whether they're true or false, because there's a lot of things that are written about that you could, and I'm sure people, will say that with what I'm saying and the book, say the same thing, that's crazy or that's cracked, that Jesus, they would say that Jesus wasn't Pleiadian, but I do believe he was, and look what they did to him, and that is a prime example of reptilian or negative ET energy. Look what they did to him, and so that experience with Jesus that Jesus had, that's a prime example of the war between light and dark. They did that to him because of who he was.
Yeah. So interestingly, back in the Bible, I think it's the Old Testament, there is probably some sort of supported evidence of this kind of alien intervention, because there's the what is it? I don't know if it's in the Book of Enoch or Ezekiel, I think it is. There was actually a book in the 70s, I think it was, or maybe the late 60s, called Spaceships of Ezekiel. And it's one of the books of the Bible. And this was like a prophet in the Old Testament who kept seeing these strange, well, he called them visions of heaven and things like that. And some of them were like chariots flying through the sky, fire or flaming shields and things like that. And there was this guy, allegedly, I think, if my memory serves me correct, who was a NASA engineer type of guy back in the late 60s, early 70s, who took that information and drew it out and worked out that they were possibly some sort of craft or spaceships or something like that, based upon the descriptions given in the Bible. And of course, we call things today flying saucers because they resemble a saucer in our kitchen. But, you know, in those days, people had chariots, and so he would call them, I saw a wheeled chariot, or I saw a flaming shield, because they were much more familiar objects to them, and it's the best that they could give a description of. So a flaming shield sounds like a craft re-entering the atmosphere to me, which is interesting. So there could be a connection to it. And then you got the Star of Bethlehem, which moved and guided people to Bethlehem, you know. So
stars don't move.
Well, that's right, unless they're comets or celestial
or spaceships
objects or something like that, or spaceships. Yeah. So you know, there's lots of things you could take in the Bible. You could perhaps twist it so many different ways, but that's one particular way that kind of ties up with you know, off-planet kind of activity in my book.
It really does. And what they've showed me is that the vast majority of what we've been taught in the school system and what we've been taught within society to be true, the very opposite is true. So in the beginning, there was, you know, light and dark. There was a war. There's a war between light and dark, which is still happening today. And they created us in their likeness, but you had also had the dark going on as well. So you had negative ET energy and positive ET energy on Earth at the same time, and it's this the war of the worlds. Some of these science fiction writers amaze me, because actually it's not science fiction; it's science fact. Everything they've told me, everything that we've been taught to believe is a lie. We've been dumbed down, and there's a veil of amnesia. They've shown it to me to be in terms of energy. So there's around the Earth, there is a layer of etheric energy that has caused amnesia, and that is now being peeled away or unveiled. The veil of amnesia is being peeled away, and our DNA has been changed. Our DNA has been changed, and we're now coming back in a negative way that caused us to be dumbed down. Something was taken out rather than put in, I think. So our DNA was So our DNA was influenced. We're now coming back into more of a crystalline being, where our energy is raising, and it's raising dramatically, very quickly over the next 30 years. We're becoming more aware, more conscious. We're going back to our original blueprint of how things were meant to be at the time of Atlantis.
Is this what people in the 60s were calling the dawning of the age of Aquarius, as the Earth moves into the house of Aquarius on an astrological thing, or is that something completely different?
No, I think astrology is very tied into it, and I think it has a huge influence on us and the planet, you know. Especially when the moon affects the tides and our emotions, and so does other stars and planets.
Yeah, I guess, there's actually talk I read in a book where the moon was supposedly, in theory, put here in our solar system, which again could tie up with Pleiadians maybe or something, but that's another story in itself. But yeah, I can kind of get what you're saying. You know, we're all affected, I think, by these star systems and planets in major or minor ways. I mean, the sun throwing out solar flares, for example, will affect us on a physical level. It may affect us on our mental and spiritual levels, things we haven't really detected yet. But yeah, I kind of go with astrology to a certain extent, but I don't really go with the general off the street astrology, as it were.
No, I don't either. And they did show me that there's actually 13 star signs, and that 13 is extremely important to the Pleiadians. So they showed me 13 star signs, 13 ancient tribes, 13 crystal skulls, 13 sacred geometry. And I forget half of the stuff they told me to do with 13. And the I haven't actually researched I haven't been told. I've heard a lot of stuff about the moon and how it was placed there artificially. But I haven't been told anything, and I've been asking over the last couple of weeks, actually. So who knows what they'll say about that?
Wow.
Yeah, the 13th star sign is actually Ophiuchus, apparently.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, the moon's been there something like, I don't know, billions of years or something. But if someone put it there, they perhaps parked it there too long. I'm sure it's liable to get clamped sooner or later by the constellation of
space mission,
by the space mission or something. Yeah, but go on, Carol.
Well, see, to the average normal person, that would sound crazy or cracked, but when you start looking into this stuff, and actually a lot of it will start to make sense to people. But it's very true that we are not from here, and the war between the worlds and the negative agenda has dumped us down and influenced us in a negative way and taken out our true history of who we are and where we came from. And the real stuff is much more bizarre and fascinating than anything you could write that's science fiction. And I do believe the vast majority of science fiction through the movies is actually fact. And also with the artwork, when you go back and look at the artwork throughout history, there's a lot. There's clues. There's huge clues in architecture.
Predictive programming, I think, is the term.
We have to take a break. I just had a little alarm to say it's time to take a break. So it's not my eggs doing, I can promise you that. So what we'll do, we'll take a break now. We're talking to Carol Noonan, talking about the Pleiadians and the channeling that she does for them. So join us in part 2 on the Paranormal Peep Show with Andy and myself in a few minutes.
Imagine no longer being tied down to your computer, but having the freedom to take live talk radio with you anywhere you go. TalkStream Live introduces our first ever iPhone application. The talk shows you follow now follow you, and your iPhone is now the fastest and easiest way to stay connected to the best talk radio on the internet. Listen to live talk shows 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. TalkStream Live, now available in the iTunes App Store.
Are you experiencing the strange and paranormal in your home or business? Do you feel that unseen forces are at work around you? Are you looking for answers? Spirit Rescue International is here to help. Spirit Rescue International is a non-profit organization that is dedicated to helping people around the world with their paranormal issues. Our trained team of experienced scientific researchers, psychics, and remote viewers work together to find the root cause of your issue and help find the best solution for our clients. Spirit Rescue International specializes in spirit rescue, helping those lost souls in need to cross over to the other side, as well as clearing negative phenomenon or explaining benign natural forces to ease the minds of our clients. Our team examines all aspects of each individual case discreetly and free of charge. For more information about Spirit Rescue International and our services, please visit our website at www.spiritrescueint.com. That's spiritrescueint.com.
Good evening, Agent 47. It has come to our attention, through the highest intelligence sources, that Irene Allen Block has published her novel, The Psychic Spy. Our sources tell us that The Psychic Spy is a riveting thriller about Eileen Evans, a beautiful young psychic who is recruited by British intelligence during the Cold War to participate in their top-secret remote viewing spy program. Eileen soon finds herself plunged deeper into the darkest heart of the intelligence community as she is ultimately trained as a spy and a psychic assassin. Nick Redfern says The Psychic Spy is filled with adventure, intrigue, and shadowy characters, and as Irene Allen Block shows, the mind is a mysterious and dangerous tool. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to immediately purchase a copy of The Psychic Spy by Irene Allen Block, available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Glenatai.com. This tape will self-destruct in 1 second.
Hi, welcome back to part 2 of the Paranormal Peep Show on the Paranormal UK Radio Network, where Andy and I are talking to Carol Noonan who is in contact with the Pleiadians, and she channels those beings from that star system. And in part one, we were just talking about the alien artwork. Carol, if you can go back on that, what was you talking about the alien artwork? UFOs and things?
Yeah, the alien artwork. There's so much in history when you start researching this stuff, because I get how out there it sounds to the vast majority of people. I really do get that, because I was questioning myself for years. Who in their right mind was going to believe that I am channeling the Pleiadians? And then I started to read Barbara Marciniak's books, and she actually, who is also a channel for the Pleiadians, and she actually was asking herself the same question, and also wrote that question into her books. But going back to the artwork, you know, when you start researching this stuff, there is so much information in our history that's been recorded through artwork, through books, through channeling, through sound, through music, and especially with sacred sites. You know, when you start researching this stuff, it becomes very obvious very quickly that we didn't build the pyramids. We didn't build a lot of most of the sacred ancient sites. We didn't build, and it's impossible for us to build them today. And actually the technology that science has is vastly advanced, probably by 100, 200 years now, to what we're being told and what we're being shown nowadays. But going back to the artwork, there's a lot of art. I think it's Da Vinci that has a piece of artwork where you hold a mirror up to it. And when you hold a mirror up to it, in the center of the artwork, you can see an image that actually looks like an alien. I forget what the artwork is called, and I forget who did it. But there's so much artwork and artifacts and history that it becomes very obvious.
Well, that's interesting, because I think it was Leonardo da Vinci who was quite ahead of his time in the design concepts, and he actually came up with basic designs for aircraft and also parachutes and submarines, and I think even basic tanks. They're all made of wood, obviously different from the things we have today made of metal or aluminium. But generally, he seemed to be very, very ahead of his time. And people wondered how, like 700 years before the Wright brothers came along, he was, toying with the idea of planes and parachutes and things like that. So, yeah, I can kind of pretty much go with that. Maybe he knew a lot more than he was letting on. I think it was him that used to write his memoirs in kind of backwards writing or something, which you talked about a mirror. I think it was one of those things that you had to look at his writing in a mirror to understand what he was talking about.
I think with a lot of people in history, I think they haven't come from here. I think they've been starseeds. I think they've been placed here on Earth. And I think some of them were aware of that and some of them weren't. I think they were vastly channels for information, for advanced technology. And I think he was one of those people that was a channel for information, as well as Einstein and various other people in history. I do something the Pleiadians keep telling me is about the Sistine Chapel. And I know that I get a feeling that they have information to tell me about that. But I do know also that a lot of the churches were placed on sacred sites and sacred ground where there was sacred energy, or like a vortex of energy where those places have a lot more energy.
Like that, I think it's the Roslin Chapel in Scotland, which was part of the basis of the
Da Vinci Code.
The Da Vinci Code, that's right. Thanks, Andy. My memory's slipping me there. But yeah, they're all on these kind of sacred lines. The what do we call them? These ley lines.
Ley lines.
Yeah. I mean, do they talk about ley lines or anything like that in your channeled readings?
They haven't. The only lines they've told me about is the NASCAR lines, and I didn't know it was them at the time. But years ago, I was living in Edinburgh, and I was doing a lot of the spiritualist churches and developing my own mediumship. And I would go every week wherever I lived, because I used to move around a lot. But they showed me during a meditation the NASCAR lines from above. And during the meditation, I went up and I was looking from above the earth. And they were showing me the NASCAR lines. And I didn't know at the time that it was the Pleiadians showing me this. But anyway, I went up and I was looking down on the earth and I was looking at the NASCAR lines. And I was being shown that they were above the earth. And they created, I'm not sure who created the NASCAR lines. I think I've written it down somewhere, but I do forget a lot of the channeled information, because when I'm channeling, I go into an altered mind state. And when I come back from that, I often forget a lot of the information, which is one of the reasons I need to write everything down. And that's also, the loss of memory is probably also to do with my childhood, where you have loss of memory to keep you
protected, maybe?
Yes, exactly, to keep you protected. Because if you were to remember some of the stuff from childhood, it would cause you to kind of fragment.
I think I've heard similar things actually about previous lives, is that we're not shown our previous lives in general because they want you, or hey, maybe ourselves want us to protect ourselves from previous memories of what we've done wrong or what we've done right even. Just literally because otherwise the whole thing could get too complicated. And the idea is that you're in this role now, and this is the role you've got to play. But if you have a memory of like you were Hitler or Stalin or someone further back, the whole thing could get a bit disturbing. But you know, it's not a kind of proven fact, of course, reincarnation. It's only based upon what people believe or hypothesis, or you know, maybe there's evidence of that through hypnosis. We did actually have a guest a few months back that was talking about this kind of thing, which was very interesting.
And shows like Ghost Inside My Child, which are quite interesting as well.
Yeah.
I've seen some of those. Yeah, they're very interesting when the child can remember their past lives, and then they go. I was watching the one the other day, where they actually the parents couldn't put it to the side anymore, and they actually took the child to the place and met the child's previous husband.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Crucially, you talk about proof, Neil. Crucially, a lot of the children have very clear, distinct, specific memories that they shouldn't know about, that often turn out to be true.
Yeah. Although there'll probably be so many people out there that'll, the skeptics as they're called, will come back and say, "Oh, well, you know, they've probably picked that up off the internet. You know, with the technology of today, we can pick up things, you know, with a click of a finger."
But a 3-year-old child.
Well, they'll point at kids that are so adept at swiping mobile phones and things like that, you know, that kind of stuff, you know. So they're not just playing with play bricks these days; they're literally playing with phones. You just and the fact is, you can talk to your phone, can't you? You can ask it questions. This is where the skeptics will have a field day with this kind of thing.
True, but then some of the information that the children are getting aren't actually in the public domain, and they've had to dig a lot deeper to uncover it.
Yeah. You can imagine all these little kids getting really frustrated because they can't get onto their favourite YouTube channel because it's been banned. But getting back to the aliens and things.
When I was, I don't remember how old I was, but I know that I was in Dublin and I was with my mum, and I hadn't been there before, and she knew I hadn't been there before. And I started to have a memory when I was there, and I've written about it in the book, but I remembered Dublin. I remembered living there before, and I remembered being a man and working in some type of factory. I was the manager or the owner. I was actually running it, but it was in Dublin, and I remembered the street names and the road names and what was around the corner. And as I was remembering it, I was telling my mum what was around the corner and what was over there and who I was. And I remember she just kind of looking at me, you know, because she would have known Dublin at the time, and I was somewhere between the age of 5 and 9, and somewhere along the way, I kind of lost the memories.
Did you have any idea of what you were in charge of at this factory?
I think it was, I forget now, but it is written in the book, but I think it was a fabric, something to do with fabric. I remember I used to be quite, I wouldn't say religious, but I was quite spiritual, and I would go to the church on a Sunday. Very much a family man.
I was just thinking, because I know the Titanic was built in Dublin. I think it was anyway. Or was it Belfast? I don't know. It's in Ireland.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
And I was thinking, maybe it's something to do with that. But obviously, it doesn't sound.
What
like
was the connection with either Portsmouth or Southampton with Titanic? I thought there was a connection there
It was
somewhere.
launched from Southampton.
That was it.
It was built in Northern Ireland. It was actually maiden voyage. It started off, i.e., with paying passengers from Southampton. So that's the connection.
Okay. Yeah.
So I mean, with you told your mum, she just kind of looked at you and said, "I stop talking rubbish," or yeah, and so maybe you suppressed it perhaps some way.
Well, she was raised as a Catholic in Ireland, and she would just go quiet when I would come out with stuff like that. And there's one memory I have as well of I was playing at school one day at my primary school, and it was quite a big school. It was huge, in fact, and the playground area was surrounding the school, and then you had the steps going up. You had huge steps going up to the main entrance of the school. And I remember I used to play a lot after school just by myself with Spirit. And I remember turning round one day, and there was no one else in the playground. All the teachers, everyone had gone. And I looked up and I saw a man. And this is in the heart of poverty-stricken Hackney. And his clothing was absolutely beautiful. And I remember seeing, I don't know how I saw it, but his clothes, the stitching in his clothes, they looked like they were handmade clothes. And he was shining. He was he wasn't very tall. He was shining, and he had this beautiful aura around him. And then a few months later, and I didn't take any more notice of it, but I remember he was talking to me telepathically, so it must have been Spirit. But I saw him physically, as clearly as I can see you or anyone else physically. But he was glowing. There was this glow of energy around him, which would be the aura. And then a couple of months later, we were in Paris, in France, and I remember I was in the market with my mum, and I saw the same guy, and I said, "Mum, there's that guy from the school," and she just picked me up and started running. I don't know what she was thinking or what was going on with her, why she would do that. She never questioned me about anything. And I spoke very rarely. That was one of the times I told her. But as I got older, while during my childhood, as I got older, Spirit kept telling me, don't tell people, don't tell people, don't tell people, because people didn't understand what I was seeing. So I stopped talking about my spiritual experiences, and some of them were way out there, because I do believe that I would have been locked up, and the key would have been thrown away had I have come out of the spiritual closet and said what I was seeing.
Have the Pleiadians given you any predictions? I don't know if they would do that, of how they think humanity and mankind is going to go. And there's probably, I'm going to guess, there's probably two different timelines. Number one, a negative one, where we self-implode, nuclear war, the whole planet is destroyed, global warming, all that kind of thing. And maybe a positive one where we clean things up, get rid of nuclear weapons, create peace and unity. Have they kind of delved into that at all?
I think they have a little bit, not as much as I would like them to, and I'm hoping that they will come forward with more information to do with that. But they've shown me that the time now is the negative time. I mean, if you look at the world and what's going on in the world, and I think it's a negative agenda that's really influencing the negative side of things, because I think naturally and instinctively, we are very loving, and we do care. We do love our neighbour and our brothers and our sisters and our mums and our fathers and our parents and, even the guy down the road. And I think it's abnormal. The amount of violence that we see on the news, and the amount of
it's bizarre, isn't it, Carol? I mean, London.
Really
I don't know if you.
I haven't.
It's just insane. It's just stabbings everywhere, gangs everywhere, drug gangs and shootings. It's just we've actually, London has actually overtaken New York for violent crime. It's bizarre.
That's really bad.
Yeah.
That's really bad. I remember being in Egypt a couple of years ago, and I actually felt safer in Egypt than I did in Dublin, because I was living in Dublin at the time.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
So
I'm not surprised. The mayor of London is utterly useless, completely useless. I don't know why he's still in office. Absolutely.
Well, maybe that's why.
Could be.
Maybe he's, he's part of the negative agenda, maybe, and that's why there's no perceived action that he's taking.
Yeah, no solution to it. Mm-hmm. It kind of makes me think of the old kind of Masonic motto, "Ordo ab chaos," order out of chaos. I mean, it does seem that it's all a little bit planned. It's a bit like it's unfolding like a script of a movie, and we've got all these kind of jihadist ISIS terrorists coming back as well. This Shamima Begum, who I think personally should be tried as a traitor, but at first I think she was denied entry to the UK, but I think they might be backtracking and allowing her in. But now, believe it or not, this is absolutely crazy. There's actually a union of jihadists who, now that they're being utterly defeated out in Syria and there's only one little enclave of them left, they all want to come back into the UK now. And if they do, that would be utter carnage. I mean, can you imagine inviting the enemy? And it would be like the days of the IRA, and instead of arresting the IRA, just kind of like allowing them to come in and just say, hey, come and have a council house, come and have full benefits. It's completely mad. And the only way that any of this could be sensed is that it's planned. That this is what they want. They want chaos. They want complete destruction of humanity.
Absolutely. And we need to start taking our power back and become more loving individuals, and it doesn't, we don't need to reach thousands of people. It starts by us being loving to the guy on the street, the homeless guy, or the guy down the road, or the neighbor, or the person in the shop on a daily basis. That's where it starts. Because I think with what you were saying, and I tend not to watch the news as much as I can, because it just affects me too much emotionally.
It's just depressing.
It does. And it is, we have been set up, so the negative agenda is trying to enforce that we stay on a negative energy, within a negative energy, to influence us, to keep us dumbed down, and to keep so that, because they want to win, they really want to win. So they're trying to influence us now more than ever in a negative way, so that we react to that energy. We react as human beings. We react to our environment and the energy we're in. And if it's of a lower frequency and low vibration, that's what energy is like smoke, and it's contagious. So it has movement, it has fluidity. So whatever energy or environment we're in, or we believe we're in, through the news and media and images and violence on TV, if we think we're in that, we react to it. So we need to raise our energy, raise our vibration, be more loving to each other, and not let that affect us.
It's just, you just got to wonder, like, what are these beings getting out of this? Like, what are they doing? I've heard this theory that they're vampires, that they're psychic, energetic vampires, but it's just pathetic. It's just pathetic, really. Unless we go in a completely different direction and we see this whole universe and this whole reality as a giant kind of matrix construct, and they are literally programs running as a kind of like a learning tool for the light to know itself as light. And I'm beginning to lean that way, actually.
Yeah, I think we're in a big celestial tumble dryer, and it's on hot. And my nylons are melting. So with the Pleiadians, I mean, they're like quite a few light years from us. If you're going to fly a ship there or something, I mean, do they visit us, or does it literally have to come through channeled messages? Do they actually come in ships at all?
They do. And when I see them, or when I connect, when I'm channeling them, I see them in my mind's eye behind me, slightly on the left. And there's one particular guy, Ashtar, who's given me his name to be Ashtar, and I do believe that's his name, and he would be quite well known. So I see them physically in my mind's eye as if they're stood behind me, like spirit would be stood behind me. I don't know about the physical distance or how far it is, but I do believe that they are. You can see them physically. I have been told by someone that I will, over the next 2 or 3 years, I will actually see them physically, and they'll take me onto the ships physically. So I'm very much looking forward to that. I'm very open-minded about that. But they're telepathic, so they can communicate with us telepathically. I think it depends on our soul level and how advanced we are spiritually. And that, to me, that can only come about through reincarnation.
Okay, so they're going to plan to take you, invite you on board a ship. That'd be great. Now the skeptics will say, okay, grab a device off their table when you go, bring it back with you, or take some photos on your mobile phone. How are you going to approach it if you are taken on board a ship?
Well, my next step is, I didn't have any schooling. I didn't have a secondary education. My next step is in order to try and prove this stuff, because I know how bizarre, and not bizarre, but how crazy some of it sounds. My next step is to really ask them, is to sit down and channel and connect in with them and ask them to show me information that I don't know. So things like technology and things that are provable. Of course, the skeptics will probably come back at me and say, well, you can't prove that. But because what we're not being shown about technology is that actually we are 100, probably 200 years now, and more advanced than science is, or NASA is telling us we are. 100 or 2 years, and that's a vast leap forward to what we're being shown and where we are now. But they've always been here. They've never left us. What's happened is that our consciousness, our DNA, our energy has been dumbed down, and we've been given amnesia, and they've always been here. They've never left. It's just that we've lost our connection or our ability. Because we've been manipulated, and they've changed the negative energy, AT energy, has changed our DNA and manipulated it so that we have become like slaves to them. And that's shifting now. That's part of the ascension and the raising of consciousness as a whole and humanity. Is that's shifting again, because it's the universe is. One of the things they showed me in the very beginning, when I became aware I was channeling them, is that the universe is exploding and imploding again and again and again and again and again. So, and that's part of our evolution. It never stops. It never ceases. It's just a continuous cycle of life, death, and rebirth.
Okay. Now, it's interesting you mentioned the word Ashtar, because that name rings a bell. You did say he's quite well known. I remember...
Ashtar Command.
Exactly. I think it was on Louis Theroux a few years ago, where he was covering UFO kind of contactees on one of his shows. And he went and visited this guy who lived in a bungalow in the US who was going to channel Ashtar Command, if I recall. And he went in some sort of trance and mumbled a lot of strange, really quick words that we didn't understand. So very, very bizarre. But I think Louis Theroux came out looking more perplexed before he did when he went in. So,
I'm sure he did.
I would have thought that Ashtar Command, being the guy in charge, would have at least kind of said it in clear English. so that knowing that you have an audience of millions watching through the TV program, and if they want to kind of uplift humanity and save humanity, that at least they could have got their phrase book correct, and this guy channeling Ashtar Kamal would have brought it through in clear English. So I just kind of bizarre. I mean, if you can bring through Ashtar or Ashtar Kamal in clear English so that we can get some clear information, that would be great. I mean, do you record your sessions or do you write them down? How's it come through?
Well, I can type faster than I write. So when I'm channeling, I do use the laptop so that because they come through so quickly, and they do talk to me in English. I mean, it's no good them talking to me in Spanish or Greek or Pleiadian light language, because I have no idea what they're talking about, and I wouldn't be able to write it. I wouldn't be able to verbalize it. So they do talk to me in English as if they are. I mean, there's no difference in the way they communicate to me than the way spirit or my guides communicate to me. They talk to me in English so I can understand, because I'm just a messenger. I'm just here to bring forward the information, and it really has nothing to do with me. I'm just a clear channel for them. But I have heard that so the information they share with me is in English, so I can understand it, so I can record it and get it out there into the public eye. And I always feel, since I started this whole journey, this whole process, and at times it's more than others, but and at the moment it's very strong, but I feel a strong urgency to get this information out there as quickly as possible, because and that's coming back to do with the War of the Worlds, because the more of us as starseeds or light workers or whatever you want to call us, get the information out there, the more it will shift humanity and the more it will speed up the whole process. So recently I've been realizing that there is a lot of channels for the Pleiadians or other star nations. Some of them realize who they're channeling and some of them don't. Some of them are real channels. Some of them are fake.
It's interesting you say some are fake. So how does one go about sorting out the wheat from the chaff then of all these channelers?
I think it's how it makes you feel as an individual. I think if the person is genuine, you will feel it.
Okay, so anybody, say for instance, you publish a book on your channelings, and then you got Ashtar commanding Louis Theroux's program that published his book on Ashtar Command and Pleiadians, and then you got a person, say in America somewhere else or Canada or whatever, they publish their book on the thing. So we as humans could go around picking up each book from each author, and you'd have to read each book presumably to kind of get a feel for it, and you would know intuitively in your gut feeling which is the correct book.
Exactly.
Follow. Yeah.
Exactly.
But you've also purchased those 3 books, and the royalties have gone to each person, whether they're genuine Ashtar Command or not, sort of thing. So, is there a way that you could get drawn to the right person without having to go and buy the book first to sort of sort it out? Could the Pleiadians maybe influence us to go to the right person without having to go through the hassles of going and buying the book first of all? Because I wouldn't want to waste my money on 2 books knowing they're not genuine. I'd rather spend the money on the book that I never feel drawn to before I buy it, sort of thing. Okay.
Well, I think the vast majority of people who say they are channels are channels. I think there's very few people who aren't genuine. Because to stand up in the public eye and say that you're a channel for the Pleiadians, there's a whole personal experience that sometimes takes years. No one unless they're fake, stands up in the public and says, I'm a channel for the Pleiadians. There's a whole other personal journey that comes with it. And I think the advice I would give for anyone who where to spend their money, on what books to spend their money, would be to Google it first or YouTube it and find people that they resonate with, and then go and buy their books.
Okay, so they'd listen to the person speak and things. Because I remember years ago I read, you may have heard of him, Carol, the Seth material. You aware of Seth?
Yes, I have it on the bookcase.
Yeah, so he wrote a number of books in the late sort of 60s through the 70s and the early 80s before she died at the age of 54, I think it was, Jane Roberts, the author. And one of the things he said is that he said he would never channel himself through anybody else whilst Jane Roberts was alive. He said to protect the integrity of the material, because I suppose what he was saying in another way is that the more people that he could go through to get his message out, everybody, is that because there's different personalities involved and egos involved, is that they'll all be saying so many different variations of his message, whatever that message was. You create your own reality or whatever it could be. And he was trying to keep it almost pure, like on one TV channel, that you would watch your 9 o'clock news with Seth on the BBC, so to speak. Whereas if you kept watching it on, and it's the same when you watch the news on all these different TV channels, you kind of see a different angle from CNN to Sky News to the BBC to ITV, etc. And everyone comes up with their different flavour. So I suppose he was trying to say, I want to keep this one flavour by just channeling it through Jane Roberts. Now, I do believe there was claims made at the time by some other people came forward and said, we've also channeled Seth and we've written our Seth book, two ladies or something, I can't remember their names. And he actually came through Jane Roberts as Seth and said those two ladies are channeling what they believe is me, but in fact it's their higher selves or something, coming through as a way to sound appealing to them. Because if it's coming from an outside entity rather than their higher selves, it sounds much more believable. So is there an argument that you could put forward or that is viable, that the more Pleiadian channelers that could come through, the more difficult it is for the right material to shine through, because you could get so much more of a corrupt kind of discoloration or muddying of the waters?
Well, I think it's a lot to do with ego, and I think I actually get out of my own way when I'm working spiritually, whether it's channeling or reading or anything. So my personality doesn't come through, and I think that's key in anyone who's channeling. I think when someone says I'm the only person that's doing this, whatever it is, I think that's coming from ego, because I don't think that the Pleiadians would say or be involved in the energy of only working through one person, because their message is for the whole of humanity as a whole. So I think that and I know that this is a bit, I forget the words now. No, it's not coming to me. Nope, it's not coming to me. So I think it's, anyone who stands up and says or writes that this energy, this is only happening to me, I'm the only person doing this, I think people should run a mile. And I do think she was a genuine channel, but I think sometimes the ego can get involved. Like it sounds it did in, if anyone stands up and says I'm the only person doing this, or I'm the only religion to follow, or I'm the only God to follow, I think you should run a mile.
It's kind of going into cult-like territory, isn't it?
Yes, it is. That's what I hear when I hear I'm the only religion or I'm the only person doing this. It's like that's ego-based. And there is something, if it's okay with you two, that I would like to read that was channeled.
Absolutely.
Yeah, feel free.
Okay, great. It's in my book. I channeled it. It's a poem that's a page and a quarter, but it's information that I've tried to research. It comes in the poem, but it's actually a download of information, and it was a prediction. And I've tried to research it, and I haven't found anything that I feel in my body that I can relate it 2. So if any of the listeners know about the information, or maybe you two guys know, please get in touch with me and let me know, because I've been trying to find out. Okay, so here it goes. It's called Depths of Life, Crystal on the Ocean Bed. Crystal on the ocean bed, far deep, far beneath the deep, depths of life, wild, force and untamed, deepest blue, black, brightest star, lays its soft belly upon the ocean floor, untouchable and silent, silently waiting for the day to end, when it shall be found in the year 2012. Crystal clear blue ocean covers 1,000,000 secrets that lay buried and covered over in a milky white haze, and the gulls cry louder still, for never a nation will set us free. Upon the ocean bed we lay silently waiting in nothing, nothing but stillness and silence. Our waves wash onto the shore, in and out, never ceasing, cascading and caressing the sand and toes of human man. Whoever will find us laying in stillness shall be a lucky soul, for he will reap the benefits of our gold, spiritual gold that is worth, priceless gold of infinity and murky depths. We lay upon the ocean floor in silence, waiting to be found by the spiritual man who seeks spiritual gold, and it shines crystal clear like an emerald jewel, long since forgotten by the conditioned mind. Huge temples lay flooded and bare, drenched and soaked in waves and depths of despair. A nation were we. At the beginning of time, temples of immortality, the truth of our origins are out there. Somewhere upon the ocean floor, warm and cold, like ice, we shared emerald jade crystals, huge as the mountain stone, jagged and polished, shining freely for all to see, yet not found, unknown to some, and unbelieved by many. But still we wait to be found, and our find shall change humanity, for they will cry, it cannot be so. Oh, let it not be true. Oh, let it be true. Let it be true. Let my origins shine through to my soul, that I shall remember who I am and where I came from the stars that I gaze upon. Let my soul be known. Let our souls be known, my brother and sister, forever immortal, in what is known as insanity in the human society. That today we know as civilized and just. Let it be so. Let it be known for all humanity to see that we are one, you and I, that there is no difference. When I look at you, I see myself and 1,000 words unspoken, 1,000 wars all crying no, in a cage of civilized humanity and slaves for them.
Wow. How long did that take to channel? Sorry, Andy.
About 10 minutes.
Oh, really? Blimey.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's interesting. It's talking about things at the bottom of the sea. I wonder if this is to do with the they keep finding temples and kind of almost
Millennium Falcons
artifacts of previous kind of civilizations. Like I think they found pyramids near Japan of all places and things like that.
Yeah, but you also mentioned 2012 there, Carol, as if like something's going to be discovered. Was anything discovered in 2012 regarding that?
They say when it shall be found in the year 2012. I've Googled it, and I did find that someone had found pyramids in the year 2012 beneath the ocean. And then I also found that, what's his name? That I think it wasn't David Wilcox, it was Graham Hancock.
Fingerprints of the God. Yeah.
Yes, Graham Hancock had. So someone had reportedly found pyramids beneath the ocean in 2012, and then so I found that information, and then my partner John actually found that David Hancock had discovered that to be a fake. So I'm really. if anyone knows about this information, because they were talking, because when I channel, it's just kind of word for word. I'm just taking, it's almost like I'm taking dictation. So I channeled that, and I never changed it, because they did say to me, don't change our words, and I haven't. So if anyone knows any information, accurate information, where pyramids have been found in 2012,
contact Carol via Facebook, I presume.
Yeah, please do let me know, because I'd be really interested in, because now I'm at the point now where a lot of this information that they've told me, I would like to start proving it as much as I possibly can, and I'll be doing that with technology. The information they give me, because they've said to me, we had electricity in Egypt, and a nation as great as ours wasn't walking around in the dark. They had electricity. So I'm going to be asking them in more detail, how did you have electricity? How do you do this? How do you do that? And I'm going to be asking them very specific questions on how to do this. How do we do that? How do we create free energy for people?
Have you heard of the Baghdad battery?
I was just about to say a battery was discovered, wasn't it? Yeah. Yeah. Still going, is it? Or is it working model, maybe? Have you heard of the Baghdad battery, Carol?
No, I haven't. I think vaguely I remember something about it.
Andy, what do you know about it?
From what I can understand, I don't know why it's called the Baghdad battery, because apparently it's more of an Egyptian hieroglyph. But there's a hieroglyph which appears to depict some kind of actually it might be two separate things. The hieroglyph that I'm thinking is an Egyptian one where you've got kind of like what looks like an incandescent light bulb with some kind of bulb structure and what looks like a filament leading to a power source. There's a debate, obviously, with the skeptics about what that actually represents, but some people think it could be a light bulb. The Baghdad battery, I think, was something that was actually discovered in Iraq, obviously hence called Baghdad, that seems to be a primitive, ancient, actual battery, i.e. a pot with rods, copper rods, and kind of like acidic material, which is kind of like the components of a battery. Your car battery is very similar to that. So I think it's actually two different sources where we're looking at with this, interestingly.
Well, basic battery, I mean, you could make one of the school projects where I think you use lemon juice. Cause
you could use a potato.
Yeah.
You could use a potato as a battery.
Free range, of course. But it's interesting. I suspect that they possibly might have had that kind of technology. And again, it's been suppressed, hidden or whatever, because there's lots of things about Egypt that puzzles people, a bit like Stonehenge. Why has this got holes at the top of the plinths and things like that? Some people thought there were rods in there for lining up to stars and things. I don't know too much about that, but it's things I've heard. But if anyone's got any ideas about Carol's poem there, and they can shed some light on what she's brought through, please contact Carol Noonan on Facebook. You have a website, but I'm sure we'll come back to that later. So that was obviously pre-written before 2012. And there was a lot of discussion about what was going to happen in the world in 2012. Lots of people thought it was going to be the end of the world, and I got my washing in. It was kind of scary moments, but nothing really. Yeah, nothing really happened. So what went wrong, do you think? I mean, was it a change of humanity? I mean, did we shift into an alternate dimension?
I think something did happen. It obviously wasn't the end of the world. I think it was the end of a phase. It was the end of a phase and an end of an energy that we were in. And it's to do with the ascension. It's to do with our consciousness raising. It was the end of an era and a beginning of a new one, a new dawn. And that they keep telling me about a new dawn, and I know that's the sentence, the words, a new dawn, a new beginning, a new raising of consciousness, and I know that's come through a lot of other channels as well for Pleiadians. But the 2012, it was to do with the raising of consciousness. It was the end, but it wasn't the end of the physical world. It was the end of a certain era and a certain energy. And that's why everything has raised so quickly since then. We've really taken leaps forward in our awareness. and consciousness.
So this would be like a crossing point maybe into this Aquarian age, like we've crossed at that point from the Piscean into the Aquarian. That was 2012 was the marker maybe?
Exactly. It's to do with raising. And I do think it's planetary and to do with the stars and planets where they have an effect. They have an effect on us, and it's energetic. They have an energetic effect on us. And I think a lot of the ancient people, the sacred people, like the Native Americans, like the Celtic, the Irish, the Africans, the Aborigines, the sacred people, the ancient sites, but the sacred people, they've been hounded and persecuted and annihilated throughout history. And it's because of the knowledge and the wisdom that they know. And the Native Americans believe that we came, or certain tribes in Native America believe we came from star people, star nations. And that is the same, that also mirrors a lot of other ancient people on Earth who believe we came from the stars. And a lot of the time in history, angels have been ET energy or positive alien beings like the Pleiadians, star nations, as I call them, have been misinterpreted as angels and been portrayed as angels through artwork.
So now we've passed through that threshold of 2012 then, we're now kind of presumably going to see lots of changes as things speed up, as the general kind of predictions go. Now, one of the things I recollect reading about in the 1980s, again through a channeled entity, it was this, I think it was Tony Neat at Runnings Park. I really don't know if they're still operating, but he channeled this entity called HA, the letters HA, which stood for Helio, and I can't even remember the surname, like and it went off to some really, really long name. But he supposedly channeled this entity by that name, who was apparently from Atlantis. And he wrote a few books and things like that. And then I got into the Seth material, and I kind of left it behind. And I always think, did they still carry on, those people? But I remember he was talking about similar things about moving into this new age and things, and the age of Aquarius. And one of the predictions he said was that the Earth was going to tip slightly on its axis. So we're going to shift about 25 degrees. Now, I know that they've talked about our magnetic poles have been shifting of late, and I've been listening to that with interest. I thought, I wonder if that's anything to do with that prediction. And suppose it's going to cause a lot of problems. I mean, have you got anything to say on that?
Yeah, I do, love. It's interesting because and I have it written down in storage in Ireland, but an energy came through, and I know it's a positive energy, probably Pleiadian energy, but they and I called it H, and then I drew what I was seeing and feeling, but it was a spiral of energy. So I'll go back over that when I'll have a look at that, and I can prove that that's in storage because John's sitting opposite me, so that's the proof there. So going back to, you'll have to jog my memory. So the shifting. Okay. Yeah. So what the Pleiadians showed me was at the time of Atlantis, the Earth was hit by something very large, like an asteroid or something, and I'm still not sure if that was deliberately put into place or if it was just by accident or by chance. So that's a question I'll need to be asking them in the future. But something hit the Earth at the time of Atlantis, and it shifted the Earth and the axis. Or I think it was actually. I think what I'm saying is inaccurate, but for the timing. But the Earth was hit by something, and it shifted the axis of the Earth, and it caused the Ice Age. And I was shown as a child that dinosaurs walked at the same time as man. And I know that sounds cracked or crazy, but if you research it, they've actually found proof that dinosaurs walked at.
Prints of a man's feet by dinosaur
exactly.
prints,
on a riverbed,
And I was shown that as a child, and that was something I never told anyone. I was shown information as a child that I never told anyone. I didn't tell my mum or my brother or those closest to me. I kept it to myself because I was told that I would be, I'd be locked away, and the keys thrown away. So, but over since 2009, what they showed me is that the Earth was hit by something very large, large enough to tilt it off its natural axis, and the planet became very cold, and it caused the ice age. And before that, the dinosaurs walked with man. So what's happening now is it's shifting back onto its natural course, which is where which is to do with the ascension and humanity's raising of consciousness as a whole, because it was shifted off course. And the poles have changed. The magnetic poles have changed. So it's like shifting back to its natural position. They also showed me that the Earth was much smaller than it is now, and that you could mostly walk around it without the vast amounts of sea and oceans and water that we have nowadays. You could, and that's also proven, that you could vastly walk around it, so that we didn't have the divides that we do today, like countries and borders. And that is part of the negative agenda, to separate us.
It's interesting you talk about the Earth being smaller than it is today, because I did see something a couple of years ago about the idea of, like, if you took a brontosaurus and if you put it in present day planetary terms, it would not be able to support its neck or its weight, because the gravity of today's Earth is very, very different from the gravity of what the Earth used to be in the age of the dinosaurs. So in other words, the gravity was less stronger. It could have been maybe about the gravity that they have on the moon, which is 1/6 of the gravity of Earth's present day gravity. So if it was a lot smaller and you could walk around the Earth, maybe in a week or something, I don't know,
a couple of days
sightseeing, is that the gravity would be a lot smaller, in theory, and the dinosaurs could then develop with that in mind. And therefore that's where you could end up with huge creatures like that, because the gravity wasn't a problem for the creatures of that size. Whereas in today's world, you couldn't bring dinosaurs back like Jurassic Park and expect them to survive, apparently. So I just thought I'd throw that in there because it's a very interesting point.
Yeah, thanks, Neil. I'm so glad you said that, because, a lot of this stuff is provable when you start looking start looking and researching into it,
That's right. Science is basically slowly catching up with us, I think, in many respects.
I think the scientists and the academics, I think a lot of them do know a lot more than they're saying and sharing with the vast public. So it's like they know what's really going on, and then they're sharing little tiny bits of drips and drabs to the vast public.
They've got their pensions to protect their
they do.
Peer,
they do. They do.
What's the word? Not acknowledgement. Their peer kind of what's the word I'm
peer
looking
reviews?
for? No, they acceptance, I suppose.
Yeah.
There's another I'm looking for.
Mainstream science and suppressed science are two different things,
their kind of acceptance within their peer group is what they need to maintain. Their job status, their titles, their pensions.
There's funded science, isn't there? Funded research, you'll get your funding if you toe the line, sort of thing.
Yeah, and if you go a little bit woo-woo, then, we might have to take the funding away. So there's a lot of that going on.
Exactly. And that would be part of the negative agenda. And I did read the other day that something along the lines of, and he was a scientist, where he was saying that if he came out and spoke about this publicly, or his peers, that he would be living in a tent somewhere.
Yeah.
You could join us.
Well, it's wasn't there a guest we had earlier? Might have been last year, Neil, where there was a guy that was talking about the Smithsonian Museum in New York, and they had giant skeletons and giant skeleton skulls.
Hugh Newman talking about
giants, and it all got brushed under the carpet. It's all kind of like, no, we don't talk about that. We just ignore that. Skirt over that.
Very bumpy carpets with giants.
Very bumpy carpet. Get rid of all that. And now they're not allowed to talk about it anymore. And it's almost as if it didn't happen. And some people say it didn't happen. There was no such thing. Very dodgy.
There's so much that's hidden from us, and it's sad. It's really sad that they hide so much from us. The truth of our origins and where we came from. And I do believe that giants did walk the earth, and I believe that they moved a lot of the stones that we can't possibly move. I also believe that the stones that the Pleiadians have shown me, that a lot of the pyramids and things that were built there, they use sound. They use sound to levitate them into place. And I think that's been done not just in Egypt, but also in other places where things fit perfectly, where you can't even put like a pound note or a sheet of paper in between them.
Interestingly, in the Bible, it mentions the walls of Jericho were brought down by the sound of trumpets. So the vibrational aspect of trumpets being blown can obviously cause problems there. And obviously in medicine, they're using sound anyway, aren't they, to look into people, like magnetic resonance, that kind of thing.
It's ironic that a Trump will be bringing down a wall. Usually a Trump would be putting up a wall.
Yeah, that's right. He's a reincarnation of the one that blew the trumpet in the Bible. Anyway, we're coming to the end of our show. So thank you, Carol Noonan, talking about the Pleiadian contacts and the channeling.
Thank you so much.
If people want to find out more about you, how can they? Is there a website, a book that they can get, anything like that?
Yeah, I have my website, which is called thepleiadianchild.com. And you can find details about my book there, which is also called The Pleiadian Child. And that's a name they gave to me. It's not a name I chose. They gave it to me because of my connection as a child to them. So, and also my Facebook is also The Pleiadian Child.
Cool. Excellent. So are you doing any appearances around the UK, any talks or anything that people might be able to see you in person?
Yeah, I mean, they keep giving me this sense of urgency, and I've had quite a lot of high energy lately. So I've started to do a lot more. I have talks set up to do. Some of them are still to be finalised. Some of them I don't have exact dates yet, but we also organise psychic fairs and spiritual events. Which are listed on the website. And I'll also be doing as many talks as I can about the Pleiadians, because it really has nothing to do with me. I'm just a channel for this energy and the Pleiadian information, and they really want to get this information out there. So I'm kind of burning the candle at both ends at the moment, and trying to get this information out there for people, to help to wake up humanity. And I urge other people and starseeds also to do the same.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very, very much indeed, Carol, there, for taking part on the Paranormal Peep Show. And if you want to follow Carol, follow her on Facebook and on our website that she's just given there, and you may be able to see her do a talk, and maybe look out for her book as well. I'd like to say thanks for joining us. This is the Paranormal Peep Show on the Paranormal UK Radio Network, and stay tuned for the next show that's coming up after this one. But in the meantime, it's goodbye from myself and Andy and Carol, and we'll catch you on our next episode. Good night.
Good night.